picture this scenario. It's 2 in the afternoon, and you're just staring blankly at your screen. You're gripping your third cup of coffee, right?
Right.
And your brain is just completely out of gas.
Yeah, nothing you read is actually landing.
Exactly. But then, fast forward to midnight, suddenly you're wide awake, your thoughts are totally racing, and you absolutely cannot wind down. It's the same day, same person.
Right, and it feels like this massive personal failing when you find yourself trapped in that cycle. But honestly, what's actually happening has very little to do with your willpower.
So what is it?
Well, you are dealing with a mismanaged cortisol curve. We frequently associate cortisol entirely with stress and burnout, right? Like treating it as this toxic enemy chemical we just need to eradicate from our bodies.
Which makes sense, given how we talk about stress.
Yeah, but that framing totally misses the biological reality. I mean, cortisol is your body's biological ignition switch. It gets you started, but it functions on the expectation that your body will require, less energy mobilization as the day progresses. The problem lies entirely in how we signal our bodies throughout the day.
Okay, let's unpack this. Think of cortisol like a car's ignition sequence. You need that massive spark to get a cold engine turning over in the morning.
Exactly, yes.
So if cortisol is the spark, why are we accidentally flooding the engine at 9 p.m.? Because that's what it feels like.
It's not so much flooding it, it's that we are sitting in the garage with the door closed, repeatedly revving the engine instead of simply turning the key off. We are totally ignoring the biological mechanics of the entire curve.
Oh, wow. Okay, so how do we fix the curve?
It all begins in the first 60 to 90 minutes of your day. When you catch sunlight, or strong artificial light if you live in a dark winter climate, photons hit your retina. That sends a direct signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your brain.
Right, the master clock.
Exactly. That specific trigger creates the necessary morning cortisol spike. And combining that light exposure with light physical movement, like maybe a short walk outside, signals to your body that it is time to deploy energy.
That early spike is basically your body saying, it's go time.
Right. And once that peak is established, your job is simply to let the curve follow its natural gradual decline.
Which brings us to the afternoon, where we usually do everything in our power to sabotage that natural decline. Looking really closely at that 2 o'clock coffee habit so many people rely on.
Yeah, that's a big one. Delaying your very first morning coffee by 90 minutes after waking is step one, because it allows your body to clear out adenosine naturally, which prevents that severe afternoon crash from happening in the first place.
Okay, but when the afternoon does arrive and you feel that dip, what then?
You have to work with your biology instead of fighting it with heavy stimulants. Eating warm, starchy foods like rice, oats, or sourdough bread plays a fascinating mechanical role here.
Wait, really? Carbs in the afternoon?
Yes. These complex carbohydrates trigger a very specific insulin response, which helps shuttle amino acids into your brain, and that ultimately boosts serotonin.
And serotonin makes you feel good.
Right. It acts as a biological signal of safety and satiety. You are essentially telling your nervous system that fuel is secured, allowing the cortisol production to back off naturally. I mean, that afternoon window is biologically supposed to feel slower.
Okay, that makes the afternoon mechanics make complete sense. But the evening is where the garage revving really happens.
Absolutely. Engaging in late, intense workouts, drinking coffee within 8 hours of your intended sleep time, or, exposing your eyes to bright overhead lights in the final 2 hours of your day.
Which everyone does with their phones and TVs.
Right. Every single one of those actions artificially suppresses melatonin. It literally screams at your brain to mobilize for action. You are commanding your nervous system to stay wired when it desperately needs to initiate cellular repair.
But, you listening to this right now, no, we all have days where the damage is already done. You look at the clock, it's 11 at night. You just finished a stressful task under bright overhead lights, and you are vibrating with energy.
Yeah, the classic wired and tired state.
Exactly. If the biological cues are already messed up, what is the mechanical override to force the system to power down?
You have to rely on purely physical inputs to manually shift your nervous system out of sympathetic arousal. The fight or flight state. First, manipulate your breathing by making your exhale noticeably longer than your inhale.
How does that help?
This physically slows down your heart rate by activating the vagus nerve. It acts as a braking system for your brain. Second, move your eyes slowly from side to side. Lateral eye movement has been shown to quiet the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center.
Wow, okay.
And third, physically lower your gaze. Looking upward is biologically linked to alertness. It is also vital to build completely boring, low-stimulation breaks into your actual workday.
Because of sensory overload.
Exactly. We accumulate so much sensory overload. If you never give your brain a moment of quiet during the day, it becomes incredibly difficult to suddenly shift gears and drop into a state of rest at night.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because there is a direct line from that physical feeling of being wired and tired to the psychological desire to just escape entirely.
Oh, absolutely.
When your internal energy is that chaotic, the absolute easiest, most socially acceptable escape hatch you have is sleep. Think about the specific feeling of your warm sheets in the morning.
It's a very specific feeling.
You're lying there, your phone is in your hand, and you aren't actually sleeping anymore. You're awake, but the day hasn't officially started. It's this perfectly soft, consequence-free window where you don't have to face reality just yet.
You see the exact same psychological phenomenon at the other end of the day, too. Crawling into bed remarkably early because the day feels formless and there is nothing left worth doing provides a clean, immediate exit.
You just check out.
Right. And what makes this specific form of escape so insidious is that it completely bypasses our internal critic. I mean, spending 3 hours doom scrolling makes you feel tremendously guilty.
Oh, totally.
But sleep is universally categorized as healthy.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like giving up, even when that is the core motivation.
Now, we have to be very careful not to conflate this with actual medical needs.
Yeah.
We aren't talking about someone dealing with a chronic condition who genuinely requires 12 hours of sleep to function.
No, not at all.
We are talking about pure avoidance. But how do you, in the moment, differentiate between actual biological exhaustion and this sneaky avoidance-driven fatigue?
You observe what happens when your circumstances change. Avoidance fatigue clusters aggressively around periods where your day feels incredibly heavy but offers zero reward.
Ah, okay.
Notice how that overwhelming gravitational pull toward your bed completely vanishes on a day where you have an exciting event pulling you forward. Biological exhaustion doesn't care if you have fun plans, right? It forces you to rest regardless.
That makes a lot of sense.
To really understand the psychology here, we look at the theory of latent deprivation. This was formulated by Marie Jahoda. In the 1930s, she conducted a study in an Austrian village called Marienthal after its main factory closed down, leaving almost everyone unemployed.
So everyone had all this free time all of a sudden.
Right. And the assumption was that without grueling factory work, people would use their newfound free time for hobbies or community activities. Instead, the exact opposite happened. The community became completely paralyzed.
Oh, why?
Jahoda realized that employment provides obvious benefits, like a paycheck, sure, but it also provides crucial latent benefits. It imposes a rigid time structure, forces social contact, and gives you a mandatory shared purpose.
So without the job, everything just falls apart.
When you remove that external scaffolding, time loses its boundaries. Your days become completely formless. In a formless day where time stretches out endlessly with no friction, the bed always wins because there is no structure to hold you upright.
The internal critic goes entirely quiet and you sink back into the sheets because there is no friction preventing it. So to defeat that formlessness, you have to actively engineer your own friction, your own structure to replace what's missing.
Exactly. You build that structure using anchors. An anchor is a single non-negotiable act placed at both ends of your day, and the parameters are strict to ensure you actually execute them.
What are the parameters?
The anchor must take under 10 minutes. It must require physical movement. And most importantly, it must create a definitive, clear transition from one state of being to another.
Let's make this tangible. In the morning, an anchor could be making your bed the second you stand up, right? Or stepping immediately into the shower, or making your coffee in the kitchen completely away from your phone. It's about crossing a threshold.
Precisely. And in the evening, it could be writing 3 lines in a journal, doing a physical sweep to tidy your desk, or reading a single chapter of a physical book.
So it's not really about the task itself.
No, the specific activity matters far less than the psychological function it serves. It has to be an action small enough that choosing to skip it forces you to admit a deliberate lapse in discipline rather than blaming a lack of time.
Okay, so how do we actually start doing this?
The implementation relies on a 2-week framework. Week 1 is pure experimentation, trying a variety of different anchors to see what fits your rhythm.
And week 2?
Week 2 is the test drive. You select the anchors that felt natural and hold them consistently for 7 days. The goal isn't to become some hyper-productive machine. The goal is establishing days where you are the one dictating how you start and how you end.
Okay, so once you lock down those daily anchors and repair your biological energy, you start looking very clearly at the massive chunk of time sitting in the middle of your day. If your mornings and evenings are dialed in, but you still feel drained, you have to examine your career.
Yes. Having a structured personal routine cannot protect you if your job is fundamentally misaligned with your newly restored energy.
Right. So what does this all mean for our work lives?
That is when the realization of a quietly draining job sets in. We frequently discuss overtly toxic workplaces, right? But operating in a space where you are simply underutilized is far more subtle and insidious.
Like you're just coasting.
Worse, you are operating well below your actual capability level. You end up spending the vast majority of your time merely cleaning up other people's organizational messes. You aren't dealing with a skill gap among your colleagues in this scenario. You are dealing with an effort gap.
I mean, your colleagues might simply be in a completely different season of life. They might be optimizing for stability, raising young children, or prioritizing a slow, manageable pace. That choice is completely valid for them.
Totally valid.
But it creates a profound mismatch for your current level of ambition. It's like sitting in an orchestra ready to play a complex symphony, and the conductor asks everyone to just play scales at half tempo for the next 5 years. Eventually, you lose your sense of rhythm entirely.
That is a perfect analogy.
But I'll play devil's advocate here. What is the actual tangible danger of just staying in a comfortable, easy job while you collect a reliable paycheck?
The danger is neuroplasticity working against you. This is the silent cost of staying. I mean, the human brain constantly adapts to its environment.
So you just get used to it.
Exactly. The longer you remain in an environment that requires minimal effort, the more your brain normalizes average performance. Your internal calibration of what constitutes excellence begins to erode. Pushing yourself starts to feel like an exhausting anomaly simply because your baseline for effort has dropped so significantly, you literally forget what good actually looks like.
Wow, okay, so to escape that erosion, you need a highly strategic exit plan, starting with a brutal self-audit. I mean, you listening to this right now might be terrified of giving up a comfortable salary, but you can't just run away from the boredom.
No, you must identify the specific missing variable. Are you craving accelerated growth, a faster pace, the challenge of solving complex problems, or having actual ownership over a final result?
Because if you don't know what's missing, you'll just end up in another boring job.
Precisely. Naming that missing element allows you to transition to practical exit mapping. First, you assess your financial runway with complete honesty. Can you survive for 2 months without income?
That sounds scary for a lot of people.
It is, but that financial buffer is the difference between searching from a position of power and searching from a position of desperation. Next, you conduct a market test by taking exactly 10 recruiter calls.
10 is a very specific number, not 2, not 50.
Right. One conversation provides 0 statistical value, while 50 conversations turn into an endless procrastination tactic. 10 conversations build a statistically significant picture of your true market value.
You figure out what you're actually worth out there.
You discover which of your skills land instantly and which get completely ignored. And once you hit 10, you stop taking calls to preserve your time and focus your energy.
Okay, so while you're gathering this market research, the counterintuitive move is to actually lean into the job you despise. You go to your current manager and actively ask for more responsibilities.
Yes, as crazy as that sounds.
You do this purely to generate recent, high-impact bullet points for your resume right before you walk out the door. And when you finally sit down for interviews, you have to completely flip the narrative on short job tenures.
Short tenures are traditionally seen as massive red flags, right?
Yeah.
Signaling instability. But you reframe them by explaining that leaving a bad fit quickly demonstrates strong self-awareness.
Oh, I like that.
You tell them you know exactly what environment you need to deliver high-level work, and you refuse to waste a company's time pretending otherwise. To a hiring manager who actually values high standards and decisiveness, that narrative demonstrates extreme competence.
Now, let's consider the alternative path. Say you decide not to find another employer, but to build something yourself. You channel your frustration into an escape plan, developing a brilliant idea for a side business or a creative project.
That happens a lot.
Yet we see a massive paradox here. The individuals with the highest energy and the greatest ambition constantly leave their absolute best ideas trapped indefinitely inside their own heads. Why is that?
Because an idea that remains in your head is flawless. It has never once been challenged by the friction of reality. Highly capable people use relentless research as a sophisticated form of avoidance.
Ah, the research trap.
You spend months studying competitors, refining your unique angle, and consuming endless information under the guise of necessary preparation.
You're saying the research phase is actually a comfortable hiding place?
It absolutely is.
I mean, you listening to this right now might have a folder full of business plans or half-written chapters that nobody's ever seen. As long as you are researching, you feel highly productive, but you are completely safe from failure.
Right. There is no awkward early version of your product. There are no social media posts with zero engagement. There are no polite rejection emails from investors. You are protecting your ego from reality.
So how do you force yourself to step out of the pristine, safe laboratory of your mind and willingly take that very first hit?
You utilize a three-step mechanism for reality testing. Step one is the knowledge audit. You perform a raw, unstructured brain dump onto a page of absolutely everything you currently know about your market and your idea.
Just get it all out on paper.
Exactly. And if that brain dump fills more than half a page, your research phase is officially terminated. You possess enough information. What you lack is empirical data.
And empirical data only comes from the second step, which is building the smallest version.
Yes. You must find the absolute smallest, most frictionless method to extract data from the real world. That might mean having just one conversation with a potential customer, publishing one rough draft of an article, or sending one cold outreach message.
Just to get something out there.
The objective of the step is not to achieve massive success or even to validate the entire business model. The sole objective is to give the idea its first bruise. That impact forces you to deal with reality rather than theory.
But the moment you take that bruise, the immediate psychological instinct is to retreat back to the safety of research. I mean, nobody likes getting bruised.
No, they don't. Which makes step three the most critical part of the entire framework, the commitment window. You must clearly define your commitment metric before you take a single real-world action.
Like saying, I'll do this for a month no matter what.
Exactly. You commit to 30 days of posting or 10 cold calls or 5 product demos. You set the rules of the game before you start playing because your first attempt is going to be terrible.
It always is.
If you don't have a predefined commitment window, your highly intelligent brain will easily rationalize quitting the second you receive a negative result. But pushing through that commitment window eventually lands you on a new plateau.
Where things get a bit easier.
The work is no longer embarrassing, and the results you are getting are acceptable. You have entered the territory of good enough. And this is the final, and arguably the most dangerous, trap of all.
Because good enough is incredibly comfortable.
Yeah.
You aren't failing anymore, so you feel successful, but you aren't actually great.
Right. Operating at good enough across every domain of your life simply guarantees average results across every domain of your life. Achieving greatness in one specific area requires a radical choice.
Which is?
You must consciously downgrade your efforts in other areas. You have to willingly accept coasting in certain parts of your life to preserve the intense cognitive focus and biological energy required to be exceptional in the one area you have chosen.
Okay, I'm going to push back on that concept. If I am consciously downgrading parts of my life, aren't I just giving myself a sophisticated permission slip to slack off? How do I ensure I'm actually aiming for greatness in my chosen area, rather than just using this as an excuse to become lazy everywhere else?
That's a fair point. You prevent that by turning success into a mathematical equation. There is a framework popularized by entrepreneur Alex Hormozy that treats success like basic math through the concept of stacking reps.
Stacking reps, like in the gym.
Similar concept, yeah. You don't just sit around deciding to work hard and hoping for the best. You calculate the required volume of action. You ask yourself, exactly how many repetitions of this specific action would it take to make failure statistically unlikely?
Wow. So you changed the entire paradigm from hoping for success to mathematically guaranteeing it through sheer volume.
Exactly. And the critical mechanic is setting that repetition number before you generate any results to rationalize. Say you determine the number is 100 reps. You lock in that target when your motivation is at its absolute peak.
Because when you hit repetition number 8, the work is exhausting, no one is paying attention, and your motivation will be absolute zero.
The secret to greatness is naming the discomfort before it arrives. When the pain hits at rep 8, you don't view it as a signal to stop or a sign that the idea is flawed. You recognize the pain simply as a mandatory part of the count.
It's just part of the math.
Yes. Greatness does not magically appear simply because you care deeply about your project. Greatness is the mechanical byproduct of staying in the game, remaining highly uncomfortable, and letting the reps stack up long past the point where you had earned the socially acceptable right to stop and rest.
So if we trace this entire journey back to the start, it's all intricately connected. The biological inertia that keeps you wired at midnight feeds the psychological inertia that keeps you hiding in bed the next morning.
It's a massive cycle.
And that lack of structure makes it terrifying to leave a job that demands nothing of you, which in turn makes it infinitely easier to keep your best ideas safely locked inside your head, perpetually stuck at good enough.
It all comes down to the friction you are willing to tolerate. From the biological ignition of your morning cortisol setting the pace, to building those physical anchors that defeat the gravitational pull of your bed,
Yep.
cultivating the courage to map your exit and walk out of a stagnant room, and finding the sheer grit to push a bruised idea far past the comfort zone. Take a hard look at your life today, at this exact moment. Where are you currently using good enough as a cozy, warm bed to hide from the bruises of greatness?